Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we start with Catherine. You guys introduce yourselves.
Oh, did you say start with me?
Yeah.
I think so. Okay. Hey everyone, I'm Kara Page here on Lenape land in Brooklyn, New York, by way of Jersey, Florida, and North Carolina, where my people are from, and Florida. And I'm representing today Changing Frequencies, an archival cultural organizing project that is building analysis, action, and memory work around dismantling the medical industrial complex as an extension of colonization, slavery, and genocide. And my pronouns are she, her, hers. Good to be here with Frontline.
And hey y'all, my name is Mijin, she, her, and my name, calling in from the same land as Kara, obviously. And I am a queer Korean adoptee, a community organizer. I am also staff at the Frontline, and just really excited to help to moderate and facilitate today's conversation. And I'll pass it over to JM.
Hi everyone, I'm JM. I'm here on Duwamish lands, also known as Seattle, by way of Malaysia, Singapore, many cities in between. I'm queer, I'm Chinese in diaspora, and I'm here as part of MPOP, Massage Parlor Outreach Project. And we are a group of community members who have done outreach with massage parlor workers in the local Chinatown-International District for a couple years now. I'm also part of other abolitionist formations and Trans-Pacific China Solidarity work. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to let Mijin our discussion today.
Thanks, Ceci. Can you guys hear us okay? The sound is good? Okay, great. So yeah, we as the Frontline wanted to bring today's conversation together. You know, I just want to dive right in. Kara and I actually worked together last year to bring together a group of mostly Asian and Black folks here in New York City. And you know, we actually were meeting and working together starting in April of 2020. And it's been really troubling to me to see that after, you know, 1 year later, here we are, finally the more mainstream media is paying attention. Finally, elected officials are saying they're gonna stand up and care about the waves of anti-Asian violence. And it's also disappointing that we're seeing actually even more violence towards Asian communities happening on a national scale. And obviously on the top of my mind are the recent mass killings in Atlanta. So I just wanted to name that these killings and these lives who we've lost, it feels preventable. And so we wanted to bring folks together today to talk about it. And so my first question for folks that I want to direct to Kara is, what do we need right now, and what does solidarity look like?
Right. Thank you. Yes, it was very powerful to gather about a year ago. Not only, it was certainly at the heightened response of the Trump administration targeting Asian communities using offensive anti-Asian racist language like Kung Flu that allowed for the pervasive anti-Asian violence that started to increase a year ago. But like Mijin said, took forever to get into the mainstream media for folks to really understand the impact it was making. For myself as a Black queer organizer who is also an architect of healing justice and has been deep organizing as an abolitionist around collective care and safety, especially with LGBTQ people of color and Black and Indigenous folk, Two-Spirit and gender nonconforming, always looking at ways we can interrupt and dismantle systems that are preserved, they say, for the safety and well-being of us, but has never been for, by, or about us. as Black and brown people, as immigrant people and refugees, as queer and trans and gender nonconforming, as people with disabilities, as people who are formerly incarcerated and institutionalized. So the work that we've been trying to build here in New York, or the work that I've built with the Andre Lord Project, Project South, Southerners on New Ground, and the Kindred Southern Healing Justice Collective, has always been about how do we move in formation for the collective care and safety of our people, knowing the state has never, ever done that. And in particular, as an extension of state control, looking at the ways violent state has used the preservation of security and safety to control, to contain, to police, to brutalize, to imprison and institutionalize our communities. And so it was never about wanting to rely on the police for our safety during COVID, before COVID, after COVID, if there is such a thing, but also understanding where does the increase of fear of communities around disease, which has been so prevalent as an extension of the colonialist project, to identify Black people, Asian people, Arab people, Latinx, Indigenous people as dirty, as impure, as sinful, as criminal. These racist ideas of our literal bodies have been used to project a eugenic project on our people for centuries. So COVID was an opportunity to platform old archaic ideas like yellow peril, the fear of security and disease from Asian people, like anti-Black racism that is so pervasive around the fear of Black people being criminals or animals or monsters. These are old ideas used against us to control us, contain us, and kill us. And so the prominent ways that Asian and Black folks in particular in this moment can build solidarity and alliance is taking old narratives that are deeply, deeply historically racist and violent and turn those narratives into how we are building our own collective care and safety that deeply values our worth, that is not based on a capitalist racist construct.
Thank you. Thank you. Fire.
And yeah, I wanna kick it over to JM and ask if you have things that you want to build on that. What do we need right now? What does solidarity look like in this moment?
Yeah, I think for me, as an Asian femme person, I have had a lot of issues with this notion, this slogan, Asian hate, right? Stop hating. I think it's really decontextualized and ahistorical. It doesn't draw from the legacy of Black, Asian, Afro-Asian unity and struggle, which was in the 60s, that was really rich here and also globally and internationally. And when we talk about Asian hate, I mean, it makes it seem like this is a one-time situation or that we can't trace the legacy. And like what Kara had said, the racism against Asian people and the racism against Black folks here and also internationally, the colonialism, like those are intertwined processes, right? And so I think we need to draw on that legacy and really not present ourselves as this model minority. I'm really scared about that in this moment of how it's so easy for the powers that be to point to Asian struggles as peaceful, nonviolent, not, so unlike what happened during the George Floyd rebellion, right? And I really want us Asian folks to draw from our legacies. People are fighting right now in Burma. That's our people. People have been fighting in Hong Kong. People have been fighting in the Philippines. And they have not been, just appealing to the state as victims. They have been fighting back and really pushing back and calling out imperialism, calling out nationalism, calling out state repression. And how can we draw from that legacy, right? How can we resist the amnesia that American assimilation is, to say we have to forget where we come from and we have to not see and we have to ignore the struggles back in the homelands. And so for me, there's such rich tradition and legacy of both Afro-Asian resistance and also Asian resistance in the homelands that we need to adapt here right now, rather than doing this Stop Asian Hate hashtag that I see in Seattle and Washington, that the governor and the mayor are just all so willing to placate. They're so willing to send in cops, to patrol the neighborhood. And this is a particular dynamic in Seattle. I don't know how it plays out in New York, where the SPD, Seattle Police Department, shows special favors almost to Chinatown. It's like any small thing that happens in Chinatown, you have community safety coming out, you know, from the police saying, they co-opted that term, right? Community safety. But, you know, the police will be like, oh my God, we really care about Chinatown. Let's get into conversation with these leaders, blah, blah, blah. But when it's in other parts of the city, Black areas of the city, you know, Latinx in undocumented areas, then it's like, yo, these people are, you know, racist attitudes, right? And so I think it's really important for us as Asian Americans right now to really examine, like, yes, we have that righteous anger. We are really like, we're grieving, all that, but let's not define ourselves through proximity to whiteness. Let's acknowledge, you know, Black and Native resistance here. And that's the creation. That's the home that I want to build. That's how I want to identify who I am, rather than do this, you know, citizenship test, which is important because people don't want to get deported. But, you know, that's a whole setup, right? It's a new colonial setup.
Yeah, and I think I just want to name also, right, the Yeller, I think what's coming up for me is like the intersections, like being located at the intersections of all these different identities, like the folks in Atlanta, for example, right? Like being working class, like immigrant, women, Asian. And I think part of the reason I wanted the two of you to join is also like being kind of like located at the intersect, like having intersecting identities, because I think I think that we're the ones who get it the most, right? And also, I think that folks who are at these who are located at these intersections, we also need to be centering those folks the most. And so, JM, I want to invite you to talk a little more about the Massage Parlor Outreach Project, if you want, and kind of the impetus behind that, and maybe talk about your statement.
Yeah, thank you. So the Massage Parlor Outreach Project, MPOP, is named after Hot Pot because we love Hot Pot, you know, and it was formed in 2018. We're like this scrappy group of community members, right? Who are like, you know, there are folks in our communities who are not being, you know, who are not being served, and like who are being invisibilized, who are isolated. And, you know, a lot of us are part of transnational labor solidarity work with folks in China and Hong Kong. And so knowing about the worker culture and resistance back in Asia, and really thinking, hey, how is that being, you know, transferred over here, right? To most Americans, to most folks here, like, you know, the thing I point out a lot is there are massage parlors in every city, every suburb in the United States. But there's only one narrative to talk about the stories of the women who are there, is that they're trafficked, right? And so when they're trafficked, you know, it goes along with this whole white savior, you know, rescue industry stuff. And so that's something we really resist. We're like, what are the stories of the people who are working, you know, in massage parlors? Like, let us understand, let us build relationships and community, let us draw from the traditions we have back home. And so in 2018, we started this up, and really it's just a group of, you know, in this case, it's mostly Chinese folks, because the massage parlors in the local Chinatown-International District are mostly Chinese run. So we would go around and just like talk to people and have goodie bags. We like translate things that are happening in, you know, current affairs. So like stuff with BLM, you know, a lot of our folks don't get that media. They don't get that, well, at least not progressive media. They get a lot of right-wing Chinese media around issues in the US. So we would translate stuff. We have a whole team that's doing that. And it's pretty scrappy, and it's, you know, queer Asian femmes. And that's who, you know, that's who we are. We're the ones doing the work. And one of the things that has, talking about intersectionality, one of the things that has been really jarring is, you know, back then there were police raids on these massage parlors, and there are dominant, you know, Asian American groups that support that, right? That like talk about massage parlors as like seedy, you know, establishments that, you know, need to be removed from Chinatown ID because it gives Chinatown a bad image. And I'm like, image for who? Like, who are you serving? Who is this place for, right? And so it goes alongside with this gentrification stuff, you know, wanting this neighborhood to look a particular way for a particular audience that is not the immigrants who find like home there, right? And the question wasn't how can we better support the workers? The question was how do we get rid of these parlors so this place looks better? And so, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I have feelings about that of like now, you know, what happened in Atlanta, suddenly this is everyone's, you know, suddenly everyone cares, right? And I'm like, well, I didn't see you caring a year or two ago when so much of these pro-state, pro-police forces in our communities are the ones that make our people vulnerable to begin with, right? And we have massage parlors in this case, but also, you know, we have families in detention centers, right? In prison, there's, you know.
Hold on. Oh,
Cut out.
we can't hear you.
Wait, JM, we can't hear you.
Oh, text.
Uh-oh.
I had a phone call come in, and so
That's
Okay.
anyways, I think I'm more or less done with my point. My ramble, sorry.
It was good. It was very
tight.
it was.
No, thank you. Yeah.
Can I jump in here? I just want to riff with what you're just saying, like in terms of talking about care economy, right? Like who, understanding like who is valued, right, for their work, right? Because I work a lot with practitioners, healers who are doing traditional healing that is not based in Western models of care. And the ways that they are perceived as dangerous or a threat because their practice isn't somehow legitimate, validated, licensed, because I was like, ancestral knowledge and memory is validating enough, right? I was like, what the practices that we are honing into, remembering, that to me, I say often as a Black queer person in relationship to the multiple ancestries that I honor, is like memory work is critical to our collective survival. If we can remember the traditions that have allowed us to survive imperialism and attempted genocide and colonization, that is in of itself political, to understand that care, how we care for our people is political, is strategic. So what does it mean to value people like massage, I was like masseuse or massage care workers, salon care workers, anyone who's doing any kind of care. Of course, we include domestic workers, but let's widen the span, widen the scope, right? Sex workers, anyone who's providing erotic care, which is a term I've been flying around, like looking at Leah Lakshmi Pipsa's Samsarinha care workbook, which really centers this idea of safety being integral to care, right? And that how the industry that has profited off of our people, Asian, Black, Latinx folks, providing care for white, wealthy elite, right? When there is no value in how we provide care and safety for ourselves and each other, right? And so what does it mean to really push? I appreciate what you're saying, that we needed the murders of the sacrifice in Atlanta to happen in order for people to value, oh, this is real work. Oh, they deserve to be safe and cared for. And how do we, and I say, well, we still don't want to rely on police ever. How are we going to take care of each other? I've lived in Atlanta. I know that strip and have received care inside of Atlanta from different salons, and understanding. My question is, for us right now, how are we going to build alliances, and whose safety? I'm not safe unless you're safe, unless we're all safe. So how are we going to build alliances that preserve that safety, that build that kind of collective power to understand how will we value the care models that we are building outside of state, outside of private models, and where are we going to take care of each other? And not to repeat myself, now I'm rambling, but I just want to make sure that we're understanding this as an economy of power, an economy of spirit, to honor and preserve our traditions as part of our survival, but also as part of our livelihood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Sorry. Were you going to say something, Eugene?
Yeah. Go ahead, JM.
No, just that really resonates with me of, you know, I think when we think of Chinese migrants here in the US, we think so much of, you know, at least in Seattle, we think of the Amazons, we think of like the Microsofts and all that, right? But really with every like wealthy Chinese dude who comes through, there's a trail of working class women that follow them, right?
That's
who are
right.
doing the gendered care work, who don't have their papers, who are relying on, you know, these hetero relationships and arrangements to get their ability to come stay, who are mail out order brides, all that stuff. And that's all made invisible often because of the patriarchy of our movements. And so what does it mean to like lift up the voices and the struggles of care labor, right? And define it not just through the lens of the state, not just through the lens of licensing and professionalization, but through the lens of what actually helps a community to survive and what actually helps a community to thrive and retain its memory to back home, right? And I think that the point you said about memory work is so deep. And for me, as like an Asian immigrant here, is I just feel so much amnesia, like there's amnesia being impounded on me to forget where I come from, right? Both on the linguistic way, you know, like there's not a lot of space, there's not a lot of language access in our communities out here, but also I'm supposed to vilify where I come from. I'm supposed to look down at where I come from because now I speak good English, you know? But yeah, so I think the memory work piece is so integrated with the care piece because that's what we need to feel whole too, to know who we are and where we come from.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you. Mijin, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to thank folks for tuning in and for staying. I think a lot of folks stayed for this conversation, which I know in the age of social media is really kind of unheard of. You know, trying to feature. I made myself taller so that me and Karen would be
I'm going lower. Hold up. We're leveling the playing fields. Yes.
the same height. Not that I can aspire. I aspire. Anyway, I just wanted to leave folks with I wanted to leave folks with just the thought that like in this moment, like we're doing this IG live, obviously obviously we are who we are. The Frontline is really grateful to JM and Kara for joining us on like a super short notice to just kind of like put this conversation piece out. We hope that folks will engage with this, share it, but also to have conversations in your communities. Right, with people, part of the dismantling, right? It doesn't have to be that you go to a rally or to a vigil or to your elected official. It's also about breaking down and having these conversations with your family members because that's where this violence starts, right? That person who I will not name, who went and had to drive to 3 different places, right? Where did he learn that? That from? Where did he learn to think that it would be okay for him to do that? Right? And so I think I also just want to encourage folks to follow the groups who have been doing this work for a really long time. You know, like Red Canary Song here in New York City, but also there are family members who have set up GoFundMe pages to, you know, cover the expenses of having lost a loved one so suddenly. Also to the broader Atlanta community, right? There are demands, there are statements that are coming out and that I'm sure are also in progress, right? This is the beginning, it's not the end. And so I just want to name that for folks to don't stop paying attention to this next week, right? Don't let this be a 14-day news cycle. This is stuff that JM has been, you know, MPOP has been around for a long time and not gotten that much attention. Please like follow their work. We'll be sending out statements from both MPOP and Project South.
And there's many others. Please let the South lead. They're doing bomb-ass work down on the ground. So we need to trust they know what they want to do and how they're going to build fire and action. We will follow. Yeah.
That's all I got, Ceci. I'll turn it back to you.
Well, thank you so very much. This was fantastic. Thank you, ladies. Well, thank you all for jumping in on this in this critical moment. I would like to invite everyone who is still connected to join us for our Frontline dinner party we're having tomorrow night on Fridays. We are having a mocktail. It's going to be a strawberry daiquiri we'll be making. We'll be making white bean chili for appetizer. We are also having a sort of surprise dinner. We're not sure about the dinner part yet. And for dessert, we're having a special butter bark, which will be amazing. So tune Frontline Friday, see all of the links for RSVPing. And thank you all once again for joining us.
Bye.
Pleasure to meet you. Thank you, JM.
Thank
You're
you.
amazing.
Thank
Thank you,
you, all of
Frontline.
you. Thank you.
Yes.